So, our talk this afternoon, Study Tools for All, is it time to rename assistive technology, where we'll discuss a partnership between Diversity and Ability and Imperial College London. And as is reiterated, there will be a small, I think, 5-minute Q&A period of time at the end, so feel free to slide any of your questions into the Q&A chat and we'll address them at the end. Okay, so my name is Charlie Wood. I'm a higher education lead at Diversity and Ability, and I'm joined by my colleague Piers.
Hi all, I'm Piers and I am the Higher Education Policy and Partnerships Lead at DNA, but some of you may have seen my face before, as I was, up until recently, the last Disabled Students Officer at the National Union of Students UK, and will be representing the sort of student perspective.
Afternoon, everybody. My name is David Mooney. I'm the Senior Inclusive Consultant and SpLD Tutor and Assessor at Imperial College London.
Okay, so before we address the question at hand, let's give a quick introduction of who we both are. David?
So yes, Imperial College, a science, technology and engineering and management university in central London with over 19,000 diverse students. Imperial's mission statement includes the maintenance and excellence in teaching and learning, research and attracting and developing the most able students and staff worldwide. Interesting, 59% of our students are outside of the UK, a global institution. 140 countries represented on campus, which provides its own challenges and benefits side by side. Developing our range of academic activities to meet the changing needs of society, industry and healthcare, whilst communicating the significance of science in general. Interestingly, we have a disclosure rate that is moving towards national averages, but it's a big push on at the moment to increase disclosure to the Disability Advisory Service and to the college as a whole.
Perfect. Diversity and Ability, or DNA, we're a disabled-led social enterprise specialising in assistive technology and consultancy. We champion universal design for learning, equipping education institutions with knowledge and skills to proactively create inclusive learning environments. In our 10 years, we've delivered over 500 workshops, supported over 20,000 students, and guided a range of higher education providers on good practice.
So the project, as I'm sure you're aware, in the UK in December 2015, disabled students' allowances were reformed. This involved HEIs taking a much bigger role in supporting their own students, and Imperial College DAS stepped out of DSA back in 2016, and DAS realised that many pieces of the technology that was often trained, students were trained on as assistive technology, had obvious benefits for students other than those with disabilities. For example, our international students could make good use of screen reading software. We decided to set up an inclusive technology and service enhancement project in 2018, collaborating with DNA. And the drivers for this project were essentially a passionate belief in enabling all students to reach their full potential from a wide range of diverse backgrounds. Obviously, the impacts and meeting the requirements of the Equality Act 2010, student voice and student response through the Teaching Excellence Framework, and the learning and teaching strategy, particularly the strand that at Imperial that deals with inclusive learning environments. So a collaborative project was put together with the Disability Advisory Service at Imperial, Student Services, ICT, the communications team, and key academic staff through our network of disability liaison officers. And 16 pieces of inclusive technology were purchased, and some open source software was networked. We're also very keen to promote the embedded Microsoft and Apple tools in the project. And we're working towards enabling student access now on their own machines. So it's not just a networked project on college computers. We're looking to roll those out onto students' machines through remote access. We've developed an ICT hosted web page with lots of information, including self-access training videos. And we've provided a whole range of key staff training to try and embed principles and practices in college systems, particularly to influence and try and feed into the inclusive curriculum reviews that have gone on in the last 18 months. So next slide.
So the challenge, what is the challenge that we saw, which is when designing this project, how do you get traditionally non-disabled students or non-disclosed students to engage with assistive technology? And I'm sure everyone here has heard when asking students, or these sorts of phrases like, oh, I don't identify as disabled or a student with disabilities. I'm pretty sure technology, it's really, really expensive. My spelling is good anyway. I don't really need a spell checker. And mature students especially, oh, I prefer pen and paper. I don't really do this sort of technology thing. And generally just, I don't think that's for me. But the issue is that we all here really understand the value of user voice. But if a student isn't the user of technology, we've lost their voice in how we're shaping that technology for the future. And that's really the challenge, is how do we get students engaged with the technology that we wanted to promote?
Perfect, yes, that's it. And interestingly, one of the first things that we heard from the communications team at Imperial was, what shall we call this? Shall we still call it assistive technology, or will others recognise that phrase? Is it a well-known phrase or term? And so we thought, for this project, let's rebrand it, let's rephrase it, inclusive technology, and just kind of see how it sits, with the aim of ideally overcoming these preconceived perceptions on what assistive technology means for staff, students, and disabled people. Again, as Piers has mentioned, we previously equipped students with these technology tools, but we haven't given them information or necessarily the tools to recognise the value of that technology. And it's this kind of notion that we're going towards, where it'd be great if software like Claro became as kind of mainstream as something like Audible, which, when you really break it down and think about it, is ultimately just an advanced text-to-speech platform.
So what were the outcomes? Well, in relation to training, project's been running it's in its third year now, and we've had 149 students trained in the first year, and 123 staff attended workshops at the beginning of the project. In the second year of the project, that number shot up to 508 students. We were doing these in workshops, group workshops, but also with some bespoke one-to-one training for students, either with a more advanced interest or maybe with some disability-related issues. And in the third year, obviously, we're yet to complete, but 728 students have attended training sessions. Interestingly, and we're quite proud of the fact that 66% of these projections are showing our students who are from a non-disabled background. So the idea of assistive or inclusive technologies being something that are effective and beneficial for all students and can really cross over that barrier or that boundary is showing to be proven. We use an evaluation tool to get student feedback. 100% of the feedback on teaching and the benefits of the software, 100% positive feedback on that. We've identified some areas for improvement in the pacing of some of our sessions and also our technical support. Outcome in culture change, I think there's definitely been a shift in the focus to study efficiency needs for all students across college. We're feeding in with sessions with the graduate school and the library, and also Centre for Academic English on unifying our study skills approach, but it's definitely moving to a more inclusive model. Study skills and training on our technologies for learning have become more inclusive as a whole. And one of the things that I think has been very beneficial is our outreach to students with hidden or undisclosed disabilities by engaging in a kind of neutral zone where they can engage in the technologies and discuss their learning efficiency, and if appropriate, can then engage with the referral process for a full diagnostic assessment for dyslexia, SpLD or autism. Academics, interestingly, I think have started to consider accessibility in their teaching, and there's been quite a big uptake in the use of MindView for planning and presenting materials in teaching and learning. Over to you, Piers.
Thank you. Just before we get onto the Q&A, we have basically the summary slide, which is mine. it's important when we were looking at the barriers, our understanding was that the stigma around assistive technology, whether it was the disabled person using it in a classroom or a non-disabled person engaging with it, and with subsequent existing provisions already, it was also that we had to effectively challenge social stigma towards the support provisions traditionally associated with disability, to ensure that both disabled students and non-disabled students felt comfortable using it in public spaces, in lectures, in classrooms, but also that they engage with it in the first place and don't think they're taking up space or that it's not for them. In the process, we found that there's an impact of biases and language from existing historical medical models of technology's relationship with disabled people, where, you know, the idea of I'm not disabled enough often comes up with some disabled students. And I know that I struggled with that in my original one back when I started at university. But it's also that when implementing an institutional-wide digital initiative for assistive technology, we have to consider how it's communicated. How do we advertise? How do we get students to click the button, as it were? And then finally, it's that language plays a significant role in the way in which student and staff engage, and we can't overlook a student's perception of their needs. How do they see the barriers that they're experiencing as personal or external, as technology supportive or not? And for assistive technology to become truly inclusive, the entire point of this snapshot is putting forward the question, should we reframe what are ultimately study tools for all and rename assistive technology?
Perfect. Thank you, Piers and David. So that's our snapshot done. Is it time to rename assistive technology? I don't know how we're doing with time, and I've not kept an eye on the...
You're very good with time, actually. There's still, let me just check my phone. There's still kind of 3 minutes left. So if any attendees have any questions, we have time for that. Unless you guys want to add anything else, that's absolutely fine.
Whilst we wait for some questions to come in, I'll just add that from my perspective, who worked with in the UK, the public sector body accessibility regulations back in 2018 when it was all coming out, I think this study, this project at Imperial has really shown that it's not just a disabled person's issue when it comes to digital accessibility, but also that how we move forward in going into the pandemic, post-pandemic, not going into it, we're already here for a year, is essential in how, as the first presentation earlier, which was brilliant, highlighted, it's not just disabled students using a technology such as Ally, but it's also not just disabled students that will access and be useful for, you know, resources that could become mainstream as Audible, particularly when, you know, different styles of learning have been known for centuries even. And do we embrace changing the word or not? That's a question I really want people to sort of go away with, take away. What do you call it? Do you even know what you call of your provision resources in your institution? Is a question that you can take home to your institutions after today and work out, is that outdated terminology? Is it actually resonating with our students? Do they have a different word that they would personally like to use? And why? And if our disabled students feel stigmatized to use their either the DSA funded or institutionally funded software in the classroom, and what would support them in getting, you know, either training or one-to-one support such as Imperial, or getting lecturers aware of the tools that they could use to improve their productivity as well.
Yeah, I think like I might just comment there, like I know I work with the WAM program, and we work with employers in terms of placing graduates with disabilities, and we make recommendations. And for some of our graduates, about 7% of our graduates they require assistive technology. But one particular company, they've actually gone so far as supplying the license for all of their 5,000 employees across 3 sites, because they actually said everyone will benefit from this. You know, like for example, Grammarly, and you can download the free version, but you know, they kind of noticed a lot of their employees were actually installing the Chrome browser, you know, plugin. So they just went ahead and they bought like the license for all of their employees to use from this AT hub that they provided for all staff. So when we're doing kind of recommendations for, you know, in terms of the needs assessment, it's not a big ask anymore because it's actually provided to all staff. So I 100% agree, you know, assistive technology, maybe it is time to rename it to, I think one of the comments here was inclusive technology. That's kind of a nice kind of phrase for that.
particularly as well with COVID and long COVID, not even having been a diagnostic thing for 12 months, it can be very difficult to get the medical evidence for the sort of mainstream support as well. So there's that additional benefit of reducing that sort of 12-month lag time for certain institutions. David, I think there's a question for you.
Is it regarding the MindView license?
That's the one, yeah.
Yes, just, yeah, we have a site license for that. One of the things that I mentioned briefly is the fact that we've been developing ways to get software onto students' computers. And of course, networking software is one thing, but particularly with remote learning at the moment, and students wanting to use their own devices for project planning and dissertation writing, getting MindView onto those computers was problematic with licensing. But Windows Virtual Media Desktop has allowed us to achieve that, and also students can actually use their remote desktop application to tag into a free college computer on campus. There's plenty free at the moment because there's nobody there, but it's certainly enabled students to study with the software in a way that's flexible, adaptable, and suitable to their particular needs, which we're really pleased about.